Welcome to the Champs App podcast, where we help players and parents demystify the world of minor hockey development and recruiting for both girls and boys. On today's episode, I talk with Beau Marchwick from Elite Prospects. We talk all things women's and girls hockey statistics, including crazy requests from players and parents, stats credibility, and the importance of female hockey statistics. I really enjoyed my conversation with Beau, and I hope you do too. Before we get to today's amazing episode, I wanted to talk to you about the app part of Champs App. Did you know that there are over 30 NCAA coaches with Champs App profiles that you can connect with directly? These include coaches from every D1 conference. Champs App lets you create a free, beautiful online hockey resume to share with coaches, teams, and players. Your profile includes all the information coaches want to know to help decide if you are a player they want to keep on their recruiting radar. When you connect with coaches, they will receive automatic updates when you change your profile, add game or video, or alert them to upcoming games on your schedule. Just go to champs.app and click the sign up button to start your profile. You can check out the full list of the NCAA coaches using Champs App by clicking on the links in the show notes. I'm very excited to welcome to the podcast Beau Marchwick, who is the person in charge of all girls and women's hockey stats on Elite Prospects. Hailing from Stillwater, Minnesota, Beau spent 4 years at University of Minnesota Mankato, where he received a scholarship to sing at MSU and was a member of the men's choir, the concert choir, and the chamber choir. So while he did not play a single game of hockey while in college, he did spend some time in Sweden as an exchange student and is proficient singing in both English and Swedish. In 2015, he was the play-by-play voice of the River Falls Renegades of the USPHL, and around the same time, he started volunteering to input stats into Elite Prospects. Since then, he has become the women's hockey stats guru at EP and is single-handedly responsible for the incredible level of depth of women's hockey stats on the website. So welcome to the podcast, Beau.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
That's a wonderful introduction that I got for you, huh?
That was, yeah. Oh, man.
So before we start,
some of that, yeah.
So before we start, you received an incredible birthday gift that took place a couple of weekends ago. So why don't you share with everyone about what happened on the big event?
Oh, yeah. So my birthday is February 18th, and for Christmas, my sister gave me a present, and I opened it, and inside the present was a piece of paper that said, like Merry Christmas, we're going to the hockey game, the Minnesota Whitecaps game on your birthday, February 18th. And then, a couple rows below that, then it says like we're all coming, like my wife and our kids, and then my sister and her family, and then my parents, and then we're all coming. And then underneath that it says, oh, and you're singing the national anthem on that day.
That's awesome.
And so, I read the first part. I was like, oh, sweet, we're going to a Whitecaps game. That's great. And I kept reading. I was like, what? Like, I'm singing the national anthem. And yeah, so, it was a pretty cool, a thoughtful gift that my sister got for me and set up. A couple years ago, I've been singing for a long time, as you kind of read in my bio. I've been singing a lot longer than I've been interested in hockey, to be honest. And a couple years ago, I sent a message to the Beauty League. I don't know if you're familiar with the Beauty League in Minnesota.
Bramer Arena.
Yep, Bramer Arena, and professional men's and women's players now play some summer hockey or whatever. And I went a couple years ago, right before COVID, so I guess it's almost 3 years ago. And I went, and they had just like a recording, the PA announcer just played a recording of the Edina High School Choir singing the national anthem. And it was a lovely rendition. Don't get me wrong, Edina High School Choir, fantastic. But I've been singing the national anthem since I was in high school. I graduated in 2004. And I have something against a pre-recorded national anthem. I feel like it's just lazy. I don't know. And so I sent him a tweet like 3 years ago, I guess, saying like, hey, the Beauty League, if you need anybody to sing the national anthem, I would be willing, or whatever. And nothing ever came of that. But my sister is like my one family member that follows me on Twitter, and she saw it. And so I think I did kind of the same thing with the Whitecaps a couple years ago, and my sister actually sent them an email unbeknownst to me. And then there was a transition where they got a new GM, and so it got kind of lost, I think, for like almost a year. And then they finally got back to her right before Christmas, and my sister was able to set it up with him, and the rest is history, I guess. So I did sing the national anthem on my birthday. I think it went pretty well. But yeah, it was a pretty nice gift.
Recently, Anna Battaglino, I don't know if we're a Packer, that's her now her last
there
name.
you go. Yeah.
The former general manager for the Riveters of the
Yeah.
PHF, posted this on Twitter. Beau has literally single-handedly made one of the most incredible hockey databases more inclusive and supportive to the women's game. Whenever you open Elite Prospects looking for a female athlete, you're most likely looking at his work. So please talk about your insatiable thirst for hockey, and specifically women's hockey, and your journey to be a tremendous asset and advocate of women's hockey.
Wow. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to her and to you. But I'm not the only one. I focus on mostly North America. So there are other, I mean, like Nila, the Czech, or no,
Slovakian.
yeah, she's her stats and stuff like that. They're picked up by other people that that work in Europe or whatever, or that volunteer in Europe. And but most of what I do is North America, and it's pretty specific to the US. So like I had a lot of the AAA girls, 14, 16, 19U rosters and stats in the US. I take care of Minnesota Girls High School because that's where I'm from. And so I focus a lot on that, and that's a lot of teams. It's like 140 teams, I think, which is a ton compared to other leagues. And where does that come from? I could go into a long story, to be honest, but I don't think I need to. I started at Elite Prospects. I think you mentioned it in like 2015. I was doing announcing for the USPHL, which is a Tier 3 junior hockey league for boys. And that was my area of focus at first. And then that summer, I shifted my focus to Minnesota Boys High School. And then I took about 2 years to get boys high school in Minnesota up to date. And then I kind of moved on naturally to girls high school in Minnesota. And the turning point, I would say, where I shifted most of my focus to girls and women's in the US was when I was doing girls high school in Minnesota updates and like updating their rosters and their stats from like the past. I then started following those girls along as they moved on from high school to college, whether it was Division III, club hockey, or Division I. And so like the next year, this is probably like 4 years, I guess, into my volunteering for Elite Prospects. I was adding Division I girls rosters at the very beginning of the season. So I don't even know if a game had started yet. I had been kind of just combing through rosters and updating them so that they were ready when the season did start, so I could start the stats updating. And I remember specifically I was updating Sacred Heart University. And there were 3 girls that were freshmen or first year, I guess, players for Sacred Heart that I had to create their profiles as a first year Division I player. And it was just kind of mind blowing to me, because if you remember back, 4 years prior to this date, I have been updating like Tier 3 boys hockey. And I can almost comfortably say to you that 90% of those kids that were on that team were not going to play college hockey. But they had Elite Prospects profiles. And here I am 4 years after that, adding Division I players to the database. And basically what that means is they have no history. So you don't know where these players came from. And I was like, that's messed up. I mean, I think I probably said an expletive, but I said that's messed up. That's not how it should be. Like, it needs to be, we need better than that, because I mean, we have club hockey, boys high school, or not high school. We have club hockey males that have 3 or 4 years of history. Like, I guess another way I could put it, we have the NA3HL draft, which is another Tier 3 junior hockey league. And I mean, probably at about that time, we have people that cover that draft. There's somebody who was bragging that they only had to add like 3 players out of like 250 people drafted to a Tier 3 boys hockey league.
Yep.
which is just blows my mind. I could keep going. And so basically, at that moment, I was like, our coverage at Elite Prospects for women's hockey and girls hockey is not good enough. It's not where it should be. And so somebody's got to do something about it. And so that's basically when I started taking most of the North American updates and kind of taking that under my wing and focusing a lot on women's hockey for Elite Prospects. Gotcha. So that actually was probably the medium length answer.
All right. So, I mean, you kind of addressed my question of why it's important to have all those stats in Elite Prospects, right? Because knowing the history of where all the players are. So
it's super nice.
What are some of the challenges of getting girls hockey statistics? Because I know, in some areas it's great. You can get every player and every stat, and it's automated, it's dynamically updated. And other ones, some teams don't post stats, and it's even harder in some leagues, specifically in Minnesota, to get some stats. So maybe you can just talk about some of the challenges.
So that's one of the first things I ran up against was, okay, I know that our coverage at Elite Prospects needs to be better for women's hockey. So I need to start adding more of that prep girls hockey to get there. And so then you have to start finding it. And so, you're looking like in Minnesota specifically, high school hockey is easy. I mean, there's high school hockey in Minnesota has had very good coverage since 2009. And it's the same for boys hockey too. And so high school hockey, piece of cake. There's stats there. There have been stats in place since 2009. So you can get the roster. If there's stats, there's almost always a roster. It doesn't make sense if you have, stats assigned to somebody if you don't know where they play and all that. So that's not a big deal. But in the fall in Minnesota, there's like it's essentially a tier 1 fall prep league for girls, the Elite League.
Yeah.
Run by Winnie Brown and OS, and I mean they run most of it, and they do not have stats. They have rosters. They've had rosters since they started doing that, but I have been trying to figure out a way, and I've talked to Winnie and I've talked to Megan Pizon, and I've talked to a couple of them about how we can get stats set up through them, but it's been difficult. But they don't have stats, and it's something where the boys side of high school Elite League in Minnesota has had stats since like 2000. I feel like it's been since like 2000, it's probably not. It's probably been since like 2010. Anyway, but girls have been going on for probably 5 or 6 years now, and they don't have them yet. And so I'd like them to have them because I feel like it's only fair or whatever. But so it's just difficult. It's so much easier because I feel like the boys side has had so much more. It has so much more traction. It's been going for so much longer. Momentum there. I think that's the word I'm looking for. They've been going for so much longer. They've got the momentum. They've got the structure in place where they've got volunteers that'll add all this stuff, and the girls' side just doesn't quite seem to have that. And I feel like if the best leagues, like in my opinion in Minnesota, the Fall Elite League is the elite players. It's the best players. I mean, pretty much everybody that plays in Elite League is a D1 caliber girl, which is insane, but they don't have stats. And so if you got to start at the top, and then the people like the next rung down, they will emulate the top because they want to, they want to be seen as elite as well, I guess, to use. I kind of hate using the word elite, even though I work for Elite Prospects. It seems hoity-toity, but I feel like I have a fairly good Twitter presence or whatever, and so I've met a lot of people throughout the years, and so I have quite a few people that will send me rosters from events like Premier Ice. Catherine Pippi, I think she's got a thing that she's got there, and Naha. Usually Minnesota sends a couple teams to Naha, and so we'll get rosters from there, and that's how I get a lot of rosters. But there's not a whole lot of them, I feel like, that have full season stats available on their website like Shattuck does.
Let's move into kind of stats and the actual credibility of statistics.
Okay.
So So one thing that I've noticed, especially here when my kids were playing in California, is that the refs really don't put a lot of effort into actually getting the assists. They
Yeah,
usually get the whoever scored the goal, but if you look at the statistics for California, the number of points per goal is actually like 1.2. So they give out 0.2 assists for
you're
every
lucky if
goal.
you get an assist. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
kind of a
Yeah.
thing. So what do you think about about the stat credibility that you're dealing with, and obviously you probably get complaints from folks saying, hey, I didn't get an assist.
Yeah, so I've been working for Elite Prospect since 2015, but I volunteer most of those years. So it wasn't until 2021 that I started working, like being paid part-time, and I get paid to answer our email box, our premium email box. And so I get a lot of requests. We get a lot of requests. I'm one of 4 people that works at Inbox, and we get a lot of requests about people about stats. And I guess my opinion, my personal opinion, is as long as as long as you get the stats all from like the same source, all those girls should be on the same playing field, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like, yes, they probably are missing a couple assists, but so is another girl or whatever, or so is somebody else. And so it all kind of evens out. But when you're talking to parents and players, it doesn't always, that answer doesn't always fly.
What happens if
The
what happens if like someone literally emails you video of saying, look, it was my kid that scored the goal, not so and so, or my
okay,
kid got an assist and they didn't get one? How do you handle
here's
those situations?
here's the problem with video, because we do get that 100%. That is
Yeah.
something we've gotten. We get that probably once a day practically. We don't watch your videos. I'm gonna be honest. We're not scout. We are literally database employees. We have no idea who's wearing number 95. We don't know if your kid forgot their jersey that day. Like I have no clue who. I don't know if your daughter wears red skates or green skates or has a ponytail or what, or doesn't. Or if they tuck their jersey in. I have zero clue. You could tell me that that's who that is, and I have no way of corroborating that, even if I have a roster, like I said, because who knows if that girl forgot her jersey that day and is wearing somebody else's. And so we don't take video. We literally do not take video evidence as like we will update it, but we'll do it as a text note. We do that quite a bit to try and appease people's minds. We can, if you pay us to help build your profile or whatever, we want to make you happy. We do. But there's a certain, like, we kind of stick with the official source. And so if like sometimes we'll also corroborate with like a coach. So like I know a lot of coaches, and it's actually really easy to find a coach's number most of the time, or an email. And so a lot of times people will send us emails like, hey, here's my stats for this team for this year. And then I'll go to that team on Elite Prospects and I'll see, oh, that team was coached by this person or this person. And I think I remember talking to that person on Instagram. And so I'll go to Instagram, I'll find that coach and I'll send him a message like, hey, so-and-so, actually, usually I do it like this. Usually I'll say, a player from your team has sent us statistics. Would you be, if I provided you with that information, would you be able to approve, like say it's good or not? Because a lot of the times, not a lot of times, some of the times they're not being truthful. And some of the times it's not the players that are not being truthful, it's their parents that are trying to pad their stats. And so I personally, in the past, I had just directly said, player XYZ from your team sent us these stats. Are they correct? And then you eventually get that email back from the coach saying like, like no, that's not even close. Like, let me send you this, or like, but then like that really just immediately throws that kid under the bus. And I don't like doing that. And so now I do the generic player thing, and I try to get the coach to send me like the full team roster, the full team stats, and then I'll just compare kind of what they got. But then also then I get their whole team stats, and then I can update everybody's stuff,
Absolutely.
So that I feel like if one of them gets it, all of them should get it, or nobody gets it.
Gotcha.
But that's
all right,
also
so what's the
kinda,
most outrageous request you've ever gotten?
oh man. Honestly, most of the outrageous stuff, in my opinion, and it probably varies by person, is when you try and get people adding like their 8-year-olds to elite prospects or something like that. I find that ludicrous. And honestly, so in it, I'll give you a piece of information which I think you can find on our website. But in North America, we try not to add kids until they're bantam year or like 14 and under. Some bantams I think are 13 and under or something. I think some teams have 13 and under. So honestly, our rule of thumb typically is 13 or 14 years old. And sometimes I feel like that's too young still, really. I'm going to be honest, but I do it anyway because that's when a lot of like the drafts start, for especially in like Canada. That's when you've got like the bantam drafts and whatnot for some of the CHL stuff for the boys side. So that's when we got to start. I mean, if we don't start there, then why? Like, we're not really covering prospects, is what a lot of people would say. But then we also have a couple of exceptions to that, because we do cover the brick, which I think is like, is that 10? Is that 10 years old?
It's very young.
I think it's 10.
It's not 9 or 10. Yeah.
I think it's 10. And then we also cover the Quebec PB, which I think is 12, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So we do cover those two, and we're trying to figure out a girls tournament like those two to cover. And I don't think they really start that early, but
yeah, they're actually the Rose.
The Rose, yeah. So we've talked to a couple people about possibly starting up and covering those, just so we have that premier girls tournament that we also cover. But we're working on that, I guess I'll say.
Gotcha. So what's the funniest request you've ever had?
I don't know about the funniest, but one of my favorite ones I think did go viral a few years ago. It was there was an email that we got that we kind of clipped just like the body of the email, so you didn't know who it was from, but it was really funny. It was from like a club hockey goalie that I think he played club hockey for 3 years, and I think he played like 2 games. And he wanted us to update, he wanted us to put like a little blurb, because if you look on a lot of like the NHL caliber players, they'll have a scouting report on their page, and it's just like a 2-sentence thing that's from some scout or whatever. Nowadays it's from some of our scouts, but he wanted us to put something on there that said like, not very good at hockey, but did it for the boys or something like that. And so we thought it was just a funny, it was a lighthearted request. It wasn't somebody trying to pad their stats. Like I think he had like an 8 or a 9 like GAA. It was pretty high for the couple games he got in. So he wasn't trying to cut that down or anything. He was just trying to say something funny. So we clipped it and we put it up on social media, and then everybody picked it up, and it kind of started going viral, and people were trying to figure out who it was, because that's one of the best parts about elite prospects, is you can just go down this crazy rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so people were speculating about who it was, and so we're like, well, this is getting pretty big. We should see if like it would be okay if we could share his name, like, because we did it, we made the update. So then it was like an Easter egg hunt. Like people were going through, like it drove traffic like crazy for our website. People were going through all these profiles trying to find out who this kid is. And we sent him. So my boss actually, at the time I was available, and my boss was like, we got to reach out to this kid, see if we can, post his name or whatever, post his profile, so that he gets all these visits and whatnot. And so I actually ended up finding him on Instagram, and I sent him a DM on Instagram, and like we talked, and he's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Like, thanks so much for helping me. This is like the best day ever, or something like that. And so we ended up sharing his name. His name was Ben. His last name started with a Z. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, we shared his profile, and he ended up putting his elite prospects in his bio, and it was just a fun time, because it wasn't like the daunting email where it's like, oh, another kid's trying to do this. Or we have a view counter. I think you might be aware of that on people's profiles. And so you can pay click farms to increase your views. And so it's really easy to see who's doing it. Cause I mean, some random kid's not going to have the same amount of views as Connor McDavid.
Right.
And so we can then manipulate those views to be like -500 instead of like 20,000 positive. And then every time we do that, we get an email from somebody saying, "Hey, I was looking at my elite prospects and it says I have negative 50,000 views. Like, how did that happen?" Well, we noticed some mysterious, yeah. Anyway, it was this guy sent us something innocent and it went viral, and it was just a fun thing. So that was probably one of the coolest moments, I would say, that we did.
Gotcha. Okay, so before we get to talking a little bit more about profile views, I got a question for you. How come you don't let adults post their beer league stats to their profiles? Because they're just as legit as the kids ones. It's probably the same refs in some areas of the country.
That is tough, honestly, because we do cover some senior leagues. So like I don't know, I think in Canada there's quite a few leagues that we cover that are like officially sanctioned or something somehow. And in the US too, you can get to USA Nationals on like a senior league team or something. So we do cover some of those, but then there's a lot of also some beer leagues that we don't cover. So I don't know. We don't cover that. Honestly, I'd rather start covering like sled hockey before we cover that kind of stuff.
All right.
I have been lobbying for that, but and actually I'd rather cover some like ball hockey or something like that probably before beer league.
So now here's a question for you. So a lot of listeners out there, go check their own profile. Sometimes there's mistakes, or there's things that are missing. So what should they do if there are mistakes or omissions?
Well, I would prefer they reach out to me before blasting it out on Twitter, like, "Oh, I can't believe they got my hometown wrong." Yeah, it happens all the time. So just, I mean, I can fix anything that's editable on Elite Prospects. I can fix it, and they can get a hold of me on Twitter is probably the easiest way for most people. My DMs are open. I'm at Beau Knows Hockey. That would be the easiest way. And most things, like the thing that most people don't realize, I feel like, is that we are people. Like it's not just computers that are updating these stats and putting them out onto the world. It's like Wikipedia. I kind of think of it as Wikipedia. We are like a hockey Wikipedia. And so like we've got your resume essentially of where you played and who you played for and who you played with and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that's input manually, to be honest. And so mistakes are made, or like a 26 really easily turns into a 29 if you're using the 10 key or whatever. And
sometimes you will put in kilograms instead of pounds for a hockey player.
Yes, so Elite Prospects started out as a Swedish website. Not very many people know that, but it was a Swede, Johan Nilsson, our founder, was covering Swedish prospects in the NHL, and those Swedish prospects played in the Elitserien at the time, which is now the SHL, the Swedish Hockey League, I think. But before it was called the Elitserien, so they were elite prospects playing in the NHL. So that's where that started. But if a lot of people don't realize this, on the back end, it's almost all in metric. It's almost all in metric, and so a lot of the things will have to convert from metric to imperial because we're really special in the US.
All right, so Beau, and any final words for folks if about how they should think about their Elite Prospects account and the stats and specifically around commitments, because a lot of times you're pretty good at updating as soon as you see an announcement on social media about commitments. How should folks think about those things?
So, I mean, I do a lot of the quick commitment updates or whatever, and I honestly I DM them to myself most of the time and then update them at the end of the day. But if they want that to be done sooner, I mean, they could get EP Premium, which is I think it equals about $9 a month or something like that. Or they could probably just send me tag me on Twitter or Instagram, and I could just update it because that's what I do anyway. My Twitter is Beau Knows Hockey, no spaces, BEAU, and my Instagram is Beau_knows_hockey. So that's where they can find me.
All right, so now everybody knows how to reach out for you. So Beau, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Champs App podcast. It was great to learn about kind of your background on how you got into all the women's hockey and girls hockey statistics, and most importantly, all the fun stuff that you get to do underneath the database there with making this all happen. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I could talk about this for 10 more hours probably, but I tried to keep it short for you.
I really want to thank Beau for coming on the podcast. It was great to hear all his stories about managing the Elite Prospects women's and girls hockey stats and the funny requests he has gotten. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Before you go, I wanted to share more about the app in Champs app. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know I spend a lot of time talking with coaches, parents, and players about the hockey recruiting process. One of the key questions that people want to know is, how does a player get noticed by college coaches? While there are many ways to be discovered, the easiest way to get on a college's radar is to send a coach an email and provide them all the information they need to assess if you are a player worth keeping their eyes on. That's where the app part of Champs app comes in. Champs app was designed based on all the conversations and feedback we received about the recruiting process, and we've built a tool to help players and coaches connect with a ton of the information they want to know. It all starts with creating a free, beautiful Champs app profile. After that, there's some pretty magical things that can happen to help make the recruiting process a little less overwhelming. Your Champs app profile includes all the basic academic, personal, and athletic information coaches want to know. Then, by including video, schedule information, and your coach's contact details, colleges can easily start their evaluation process. You just copy and paste your personalized link and send it to coaches so they can see your public player profile without even having to log in or create a Champs app account. Or you can connect directly with coaches on Champs app. More and more coaches are creating their own Champs app profiles and connecting with players themselves every day. Now coaches can have all the information they need to assess where you might fit in their recruiting plans. Even better, college coaches can track your progress throughout the winter and showcase seasons, because as you make changes to your profile, coaches will get notified to your updates. And in the future, we will be adding even more amazing features to improve your visibility to the recruiting process and hopefully increase your odds of success. If you want to see what a player or coach profile looks like before you start your own, look in the show notes to see some examples. My kids and I have used Champs app for their recruiting process. In fact, my son was invited to a AAA tryout thanks to his Champs app profile. So go to www.champs.app and start your player or coach profile. It only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete most of your key information. Good luck, and please let us know how it helped with your recruiting journey.